Howdy, my name is Anita Avila, and I will be presenting about ethical issues in forensics. To start off, we'll start with the definition of ethics. And in this case, we'll be using that first definition of moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. And we will be using this as the principles that govern the conducting of forensic analysis. To introduce this topic, I will be starting with a case of my own, and we will call this the OJ case. In this case, we have one suspect and one crime. To start off, we'll look at the crime scene. On Friday, October 13th, 2024, 911 received a frantic call from an orange juice owner. The owner heard commotion in the kitchen, but by the time they reached, it was too late. Their freshly squeezed orange juice that they had just recently purchased was almost empty, and they have no idea how. Nearby, a black cat identified as Michi was found near the crime scene. She was arrested and questioned as a suspect. However, as guilty as she might look in this picture, she claims to be innocent. She argues that she was arrested and chosen as a suspect because of the stigma around black cats, that they are going to bring bad luck, and that it also happened to be on Friday the 13th, another unlucky superstitious day. In order to test these claims, the detectives turned this case over to forensic experts. These forensic experts then performed forensic analysis, and her paw DNA was taken to be analyzed and compared to the DNA found in the leftover orange juice. And as a result, she is proven to be innocent. Michi is now waiting to be released from all her charges, and the real perpetrator ended up being an orange cat identified through the APIS, Automated Paw Print Identification System. Now, in the real world, not all cases follow this storyline. Some suspects are convicted of crimes that they did do, and some suspects are convicted of crimes that they didn't do. And according to the National Institute of Justice, there have been over 3,000 cases of wrongful convictions. This means that at least 3,000 individuals have been convicted for a crime they were found guilty of because of false or misleading evidence. Now, where does this false or misleading evidence come from? Well, the organization states that problems with forensic evidence range from simple mistakes to invalid techniques to outright fraud. So some factors that also come into play in these cases include cognitive bias, which also includes implicit bias, which can be seen as racial bias, and confirmation bias. Another factor is errors and association. So most of the errors in evidence have been associated with one or more of the following reasons, which include incompetent or fraudulent examiners that are not qualified or have any credentials in the expertise that they claim to be experts in. Another reason is disciplines without a qualifying scientific background. So this includes examiners or experts that are working in pseudoscience or quote-unquote junk science. So there is no qualifying foundation of science being used to examine evidence. And a third reason is a lack of training, management, governance, or resources. So a combination or any one of these contributes to the problem of misleading or false evidence. And due to all of this, the Innocence Project was created to advocate for individuals who have been wrongfully convicted. And a few examples of those who have been wrongfully convicted include Marcellus Williams, Amanda Knox, and David Cam. These are just 3 out of the thousands of cases. Now, to start off with Marcellus Williams, This is a tragic case in which he was executed on September 24th, 2024. In this case, he was accused of murder. However, evidence that proved his innocence included DNA that proved he was not at the crime scene. However, this evidence was destroyed and corrupted and was no longer being able to be used to prove his innocence. This was an example of implicit and confirmation bias. The state that destroyed that evidence wanted to really make Marcellus the perpetrator, despite claims that he was not at the crime scene, even if the victim advocated for Marcellus, saying that the death penalty was not inappropriate, that they did not want that for him, and contradicting statements of other suspects that were either told that they would be giving money if they would claim that Marcellus was the person that committed this crime. In the second case of Amanda Knox, she finds her roommate murdered in their shared flat, and the investigators used a knife that was found in the apartment and claimed it as the murder weapon. And they claimed this weapon to be the murder weapon because they found traces of Amanda's DNA. However, there was no trace of the victim DNA. And even when they had a more convincing suspect, they still tried to tie in Amanda, although there was no evidence of it, other than the knife. However, evidence was then found that the investigators cross-contaminated the crime scene, so that meant that there was no reliable source of evidence in the first place because these investigators did not use the proper PPE. They weren't changing their gloves, they didn't have caps on, and in turn nulled the claims against Amanda, and she was later exonerated for her crimes. In the third case of David Cam was a retired Indiana state trooper, and he was accused of murdering his family because a forensic expert claimed that the blood pattern found on his shirt implied that he killed them. However, evidence was then found that that quote-unquote forensic expert had no credentials or history of working in blood spatter analysis. And this is another example of fraudulent or unqualified experts. Again, another ethical issue. However, he was then found to be innocent, yet this does not happen in all cases. So in all of these cases of Marcellus Williams, Amanda Knox, and David Cam, we see all of those factors come into play. And here are my sources, and thank you.